Hello and welcome everybody. Richard Chapman here with Cyber Guru, and today we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at the virtual SOC. Now, if you've already been on the platform, you probably have seen it, but we're going to actually go through it and we're going to think about kind of how you can use it to learn and to help build your readiness skills and make you better and better every single time that you use it, right? So first and foremost, when you come to the ACG platform, the first thing you're going to do is, of course, log in. Once you get logged in, right here at the very top, you're going to see that virtual SOC link. When you click on the virtual SOC, what you're going to be introduced to is basically what we would refer to as a dashboard. Now, it's not uncommon to see a dashboard when you start interacting with your tools within the SOC, but the dashboard kind of gives you an overview of what's happening in your environment. For instance, if we take a look here, we can see that there's a breakdown of how many critical, high, medium, and low level alerts that there are, and also an investigation summary as far as how many open investigations there are, how many are in progress, and how many of them are closed. So you can kind of get a good feel for what's happening in your environment, and that can be very different in one environment versus another. So when you actually start looking at the different detailed summaries of the investigation types, you'll see that there are different investigations, right? So we've got endpoint security, so looking specifically at alerts on host machines, laptops, desktops, servers, so forth and so on. Email security, specifically looking at email investigation alerts. Next gen SIEM. Now, I'm going to go into the SIEM here in just a minute and kind of touch on that. But if you know what a SIEM is, and I'm sure you probably do, that SIEM is kind of an almost all-in-one kind of dashboard as well too. And again, depending on the types of environments you're in, you can see different configurations. So hopefully this will help clarify that a little bit for you. OT, IT, cloud security. Again, each and every environment is going to be a little different, but this should give you a pretty good overview. And of course, there's some additional details down here about top threats and latest threats that the environment may be seeing. Even some threat intelligence feeds here where we can see hashes and IP addresses that potentially have either been added to your environment as an IOC to be blocked, or maybe it's threat intelligence information for you to read and to stay up to speed on. So in our environment, though, let's focus today a little bit more on the investigation itself. So you can take the investigations from whatever perspective you want. You can either go to a specific one like endpoint security, email security, next gen SIEM, right? You can go to one of those and click on, say, critical alerts, and it's going to take you to the critical endpoint alerts. Now, if you'll notice over here on the left, we have that menu option as well to be able to get to that same location. So for instance, if I were to go back to the virtual SOC, if I were to go here to the detections, drop that down and click on endpoint security, it's going to take me to that same dash. Now, the difference here was you'll notice that there's a mixture of different severities: high, medium, low, critical, so forth and so on, right? When I went to just the dashboard was based off of the fact that these are just the critical endpoint detection alerts. So when I click on that, it's only going to provide me with the criticals. So you can see that kind of filtering that's happening there based on the dashboard. And it's not uncommon actually in a SOC to be assigned a specific severity level. So if you're maybe a tier 1, you might be doing lows and mediums, whereas your tier 2s might be focused on the highs, and your tier 3s might be doing the criticals, right? So again, it depends on the SOC, depends on the environment, depends on your team as well too. So there's a lot of different things that can change based on that. But I'm just going to go ahead and go over here to the endpoint security. And again, when I click on endpoint security, all of these alerts are endpoint alerts. They are looking at alerts that have shown up on a specific endpoint. So maybe malware or behavior that actually showed up on an endpoint that is questionable, and it's creating an alert for us to investigate. Same with your email security. This is again focused on the actual emails themselves. So these are email security alerts where your email security tool is doing its job and saying, hey, there's something weird here, or there's something easily we identified as malicious. You also have the next gen SIEM. Now, I like the next gen SIEM for one reason. This is a myriad of different types of investigations. You'll notice here that we do see endpoint alerts and email. So like here's an email alert right here. Actually, I don't have any endpoint alerts here on this front dashboard, but you'll also see though that we see firewall alerts and DLP, so data loss prevention, We might even see IDS and IPS, so intrusion detection and intrusion protection systems, alerts there to basically help protect our environment there. So there's other types of investigations in here as well too. But whichever type of investigation you choose, and obviously you're going to want to do a little bit of all of them so you can really work on those readiness skills. But whatever type of investigation you do, when you actually click on the alert, and you can pretty much click on it anywhere, you're going to get some of the basic overviews and the actual details of the environment of the alert, and you can go in and start to look at it. You can start to investigate it. You can start to understand what is happening with the alert. Why did this alert maybe generate? What exactly is standing out in this environment or with this alert that's kind of triggering an indication that somebody should investigate and look at it, right? Let's go to, real quick here, let's go to an endpoint security alert. And let's say I go to, I don't know, let's say we're tasked with looking at criticals. So we can sort here by the criticals, and we grab that first critical alert here, and we can see the username, we can see the endpoint name. One of the things I will tell you that to me is very valuable when doing investigations, I always like to have kind of a notepad somewhere. Now, this is just how my brain works and how I like to function. But with that notepad, I can actually take and kind of keep track of my investigation. So if I were to, let's say, minimize this just a little bit, we'll bring this over here. And as I'm maybe doing my investigation, squeeze this down a little bit, make it fit a little better. Let's say I want to take some notes here, like for instance, the description. I can copy that description and I can drop that over here in my notes. Now, why is this important? Because eventually what you're going to do with an investigation is you're going to create a case. You're actually going to write down all of your findings. You're going to put down all of your open source intelligence. You're going to put down all of your IOCs or artifacts like IP addresses, command lines, file names, domain names, whatever type of investigation is going to bring to light the different pieces of the puzzle that paint the picture for the investigation. So for me, I like to document those as I find them because eventually, like I said, what you're going to ultimately do is you're going to create a case. And when you're creating a case, this is where you actually go in and follow a playbook and include the artifacts and the items that paint the picture as to what exactly that alert is telling us. Is there an issue? Is this a false positive? Is it a true positive? And we need to take action and escalate it to a tier 2 or a tier 3. What you find in your investigation is very important to document. So this is something I like to do. And again, it's just the way that I function. But again, let's say I want to grab the username. Again, I can go ahead and copy that and say, okay, this is our username. There we go, administrator. And I can even look at the endpoint name itself and kind of grab that also. Let me get this out of the way. There's my host name. Right, so now I've got my host name, I've got a description. So basically I can say that on this date and this time, username administrator on host name evstation01 alerted for process dumping tool detected attempting to access system memory. So I'm already starting to kind of illustrate the picture. Now, obviously, I don't know exactly what the outcome of this was, but the goal here is to continue to investigate it to get full details. Now, when you are doing, let's say, an endpoint detection investigation like this one, you do have this awesome button here that says See Full Detection. When you click on this, you're going to see a lot more details about the activity on that endpoint. You're going to see the different applications or processes that were running that were actually captured as a part of this process. Like here, we can see based on the activity, MySQL, cron, SSHD, we can pretty much understand that this is a Linux machine. And in this Linux machine, we can see that there was a cron job that occurred, and there's some LSAS dumping. Now, you may or may not know what LSAS dumping is. So if you don't know, what you need to do is you need to use your resources, right? What is LSAS dumping, right? And this is going to help you understand what some of these processes are. And if you don't know what LSAS dumping is, basically this is a way that attackers are gaining credentials. So this is something that you probably will learn if you haven't learned already. And again, as you start to dig into these and you start to go piece by piece, you'll start to understand better and better. So, we see an automatic process here being run, a scheduled task, so to speak, if you were to, equate that to a Windows machine. And we see some connection to network IP addresses. What is this network IP address? What is it connecting to? Is it connecting to an outside IP address? Is that outside IP address malicious? Might we look this IP address up in an open source intelligence tool like VirusTotal or AbuseIPDB and get maybe a really good understanding as to what it's communicating with? It might be that this is a legitimate process that runs on this machine as part of a service activity. Our user is administrator. Maybe the IP address is Apache, right? And these are things that we need to try to understand as we are digging out. Like, so for instance, here again, you got LSATS dumping. There was this IP address here. So I don't know, maybe we check this real quick and we see what this IP address is associated with. Now, this is an open source intelligence tool, AbuseIPDB, that I like to use. So this IP address is showing up as reserved. It's saying it's whitelisted. Okay, IP address for within our whitelist belonging to subnet we identify as testnet 3 whitelisted net blocks, typically owned by trusted entities such as Google or Microsoft. So we may or may not actually have something malicious here. This might actually be something that's part of a legitimate process, right? Maybe it's somebody that, we know. Maybe it's something we are familiar with. And, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of dig into investigations, and you really have to be able to think outside the box. For instance, in a normal environment, you would actually take and maybe pull up your ticketing and see, has there been other investigations that are associated with the same IP address? Sometimes you're gonna get clarity when you go to an open source intelligence tool. Sometimes you may not, and you may have to dig a little deeper and kind of go a little bit further. So your goal is to try to dig in as much as possible. And actually, I looked at the destination here as far as this IP address. I probably should have grabbed the source IP. Let's take a look at the source IP here, because that actually should have been the right one. Okay, so this one is this IP, and apologies there, I grabbed the wrong one. It's always fun when you're trying to do a video and do an investigation at the same time. Two brains, one spot. That's a difficult task sometimes. But anyways, so this is actually part of scanme.nmap.org. Now, if you're familiar with Nmap, and maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but if you look them up, this is something that probably is legitimate activity, something that maybe this could generate actually a false positive case management write-up, because the likelihood of this being malicious activity is maybe lessened by the fact that this is a part of the nmap.org organization. But again, you want to look at all the evidence. You want to come up with ultimately what we would say, I guess you could say basically a broad understanding of the investigation. You can't just go off of one item. So your goal is to try to take all of the pieces of the puzzle and think about, does it make sense? This is the value of the virtual SOC, guys. If you're not currently working in a SOC, or maybe you are, and you just want to get exposed to some additional types of investigations, this is how you can do it. You can basically be in our platform, go through these different investigation types, and learn how to investigate them. Same scenario with an email alert. If I go into an email alert here, let me zoom out just a little bit. If I go into an email alert here, I can see that this one here had a high phishing score. We do have a critical here, so I might want to do the critical first, but I'm going to grab this one right here. But we can see here who the recipient of the email was, who the sender of the email was. We can actually see the spam score and the phishing score, so we can see those details. We can see here that this actually failed all of the signature-based security measures that an email utilizes, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. So this is an indicator of a potential malicious email, potentially why this actually triggered. We also see here that there is a suspicious URL detected. This actually may be another component that's also contributing to this alert, right? So you can investigate every single component of these. Keep your notes, get your notes down. What are all the artifacts? What are all your findings? And then once you get pretty comfortable, then you can go to create case. And when you create the case, this is where you're in essence writing your write-up, your ticket on your investigation. And you're going to step through questions. It's going to ask you questions that are based off of the playbook for that type of investigation. And the other cool thing too is if an alert had multiple alerts on different platforms, it's going to pull all of those alerts into that ticketing environment, which is pretty cool. So for instance, let's say that first it triggered an email alert, and then second it triggered an EDR alert, maybe because of an attachment on that email. You would get the EDR and the email alert. It'll pull both of those in. And when you create this case, you're basically assigning it to yourself, and you're then working that investigation, and you're writing up your ticket. So many different ways you can go. And I'll tell you like this, when it comes to investigations, there's no one right exact way to do it. Everybody kind of thinks a little bit different. The way your brain works might be a little different than mine. So being able to dig in, do your investigation, go step by step, and then also write a write-up or an investigation ticket like in the case management environment to be able to see that is definitely the readiness that you want to obtain to be able to work in any SOC in any environment. As a SOC analyst or even as threat intel, our threat intel people understand investigations. They understand the steps necessary. So there's a lot of benefits there. And actually, just kind of give you a quick idea here on the case management. So when I went into case management, I can see a couple of cases here that I've done. Here's one that was completed. Here's one that's pending that I'm working on. But if I click on the completed one, you can see all the alerts that it pulled in. So there were multiple alerts that actually were pulled in based on this one investigation that I was doing. And when you're all completed and you've finished your write-up, you can go to the case results and you can see all of the details. You can even see all of the questions that were asked as a part of the playbook. You can even see the case write-up here, or the AI feedback component. So you can see pretty much all of the pieces of the puzzle, so you have a better understanding of how you did and what you submitted as a part of your write-up. So very, very cool feedback. Love the virtual SOC. And for you, whether you're just getting started as a cybersecurity professional or you're looking to continue to build your skills, the virtual SOC is an amazing place to get real world investigation experience. And with AI powered, it gives us a lot of really good opportunities to build and help you build your cyber readiness. So spend some time in the virtual SOC, do some investigations, challenge yourself, and don't just focus on one type of investigation. Do as many of the different types of investigations as you can and get very comfortable with those investigations. Look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Have a good rest of the day.